All right, hi everybody, and welcome to the last workshop for Make a Dog's Day. We hope you've been having a great time and making your dog's day all day. Thanks to Subaru for supporting this event. We are really happy that we've been able to do all of these amazing workshops, and so thanks to Subaru for helping us to make that happen. If you missed any of these workshops and you're sad about it, don't despair because they'll all be on the website on berkeleyhumane.org in a couple of days, and we'll be sure to let everybody know. So for this one, we've got just a fantastic panel of dog and animal training experts who will be answering all of your questions. So when you're doing that, be sure to use the Q&A button to ask your questions, and that way you'll get the answers. And finally, we're offering all of these these are all for free. They're all a community benefit. We are a nonprofit, and so if you had a good time today, please feel free to make a donation over at berkeleyhumane.org.
Yes, thank you, Morgan. I would like to introduce Carly, who is the long red hair. I think she should be up on your left. That's Carly Scottard. She's our pet program manager. Dee Iaroli down at the bottom. Hi, Dee. Say hi. Okay.
Hey, hello.
Yes. Okay. She has been with our training program around 20 years. I'm the senior behavior and training manager, and I've been doing classes and private work and evaluating dogs and all of that stuff for 35 years. So you have the good fortune of having three trainers, because let me tell you, there is never one way to resolve a challenge. Never. Now, while you think of your questions, and you may already have them, but I have the question and answer box open whenever you need to put things in. We have a few starter questions that came in ahead of time. So I'd like to just go ahead and kick off with the first one, and we'll throw it out there. And any trainer who has a solution or a way to start working with this, hello, okay, kick in. So we have a 17-pound terrier mix that was only adopted in July, and she'll be 2 in December, female. She won't stop jumping, barking, and biting at us, even though it's playful, despite our attempts to turn the other way and tell her no. They can redirect her with a toy, but she still jumps, barks, and bites while they're trying to get the toy, okay? So when anybody even says a little bit of hello, she goes nuts. So who would like to start the answer to that one?
Well,
thank you.
This is Dee. I'll jump in. So I would like to say that for the most, training starts before the stimulating event occurs. In other words, it sounds to me like this dog fortunately has found its home and needs to learn how to be calm. So one of the, not the easiest, but one of the basic things that we start with is a really good program of stay. And then we can move into a very good acceptance of being crated and learning to be and rewarding calm behavior. So we can't look at the jumping and at the time it's happening and say, how can we prevent this? We need to work at the basic underlying temperament of the dog and introduce some calming behaviors. That's all I'll say about that for now.
Okay, Carly, how about you? What would you like to say about this?
Yeah, a couple of thoughts that I can add in. For one, I think it's really great that you have found that you can distract your dog with a toy, even if it's a little problematic getting that going. And if that's a method that works for you, then I think that's great. if you can find a really simple solution for that, like having a few toys outside of the door so that you're ready with them when you come in, that might just make things a little easier. You can also arm yourself with treats before you come into the house, assuming that your dog likes treats. And if they're a really special treat, that can help too. And when you're coming in, see if you can distract them by tossing treats on the ground and getting them into the routine of picking up the treats and finding them off the ground. And the cool thing with that is, even though they are just going for the treats they want, it in effect is reinforcing them doing a behavior other than the jumping up and barking and biting at you. So I completely agree with what Dee said. And I hope that gets a really good long-term solution for you. And in the meantime, having those reinforcers, the toy and treat, ready for you to use, I hope that gives you kind of a stopgap while you're working through it.
And being a person who really works with a lot of training exercises, I have a training exercise for each of what you said. One, with the toy and the treat, you can actually teach a cue, go get your toy. So your dog is ready. Eventually, you just walk in the door and somebody walks in the door, you say, go get your toy. And the dog goes, I know what to do now. I'm going to go get my toy. And you can start that by, like Carly said, just having them chase treats too. Go get your cookie. All right. And Dee mentioned calming behaviors. There's a video I made on the website for a little exercise called the Be Still exercise. And it just starts with teaching your dog to look at food in your hand while you touch gently and then give a treat. So the dog actually learns how to be petted. So those are 3 things that can really, really help with this behavior. Okay. So here's one coming in today. I have these others, but I'll intersperse them. What is a good substitute habit or trick for a dog barking at the TV? There are very few dogs that watch TV, but some of them do. Who wants to answer that?
I'll take that. So one thing that might be really simple to try is to get a special some sort of toy or treat. I think ideal would be a food puzzle. So like a stuffed Kong that takes a long time for them to eat. I love putting either peanut butter or some wet dog food and mixing kibble in with the Kong. And you can even freeze it, so it takes a long time for them to lick the food off. And if that's tasty enough for them, you can have that treat ready so that anytime you turn on the TV, they get that treat. You can take it a step further and you can even have them go to a particular spot, a bed, a mat, a crate, and learn that TV on time means I lie down and get this extra special toy time. And you can practice that. You can start building up to that for just really slow increments of turn TV on, give toy, turn TV off, toy time is done, and then build up to where they know that when you go for the remote, it's time for them to get ready to get their special TV toy. That's one method.
Yeah. So Dee, do you have something on that?
Yes, well, excuse me. This is right on target with what Carly was saying. Another way, once the dog is a little along and able to control themselves, you can give a reward. If they look at the TV and look back at you, they get a reward for being calm. Watch the TV. What does that mean? Look at me, get a reward. So instead of the trigger being, this is what I do when the TV is on, I go nuts. It's like, I look at the TV and it's even better. I look at my handler and they give me a reward. So we're always rewarding calm behavior.
And let me tell you, all I have to add to that is that I had a TV barker. Anything, any dog, any horse. I mean, God forbid you should watch the horse races. And I used both of those, and he did in probably about 6 weeks. He started to be really calm and he quit paying attention to the TV. So all I can say is those work. Okay, So here's another one. They have a pretty well-trained year-and-a-half-old Havanese, okay? Cute little, boo, they're bouncing, okay? The problem is he's reactive to sounds outside the house, as well as certain sightings, such as seeing a squirrel in the backyard. When he sees a crow or a squirrel or hears a sound, he barks, okay, and very loudly until we can distract him or pull him away. So he said it's turning out to be kind of a drag. So, and it is. So when they talk about distracting him, is there something else? We were talking about barking and excited behavior, but this is very specific to hearing and seeing sounds outside. So what can we do? What can we add to what we've already suggested?
One thing that you could do is try to, instead of just distracting him when there are these distractions, actually add in another behavior. And it can be as simple as him looking up at you, which is similar to what Nancy was saying about with the TV. You can look at the TV or you can look at the person. Person comes with a stronger reward. Now, it's probably easier to start with something that you are able to predict in the environment. Like, for instance, you see crows landing. You know your dog is going to notice that the crows are landing. So you have your treats ready. And when they notice the treats, get their attention and give treats, and continue that along over time. And so they're learning that these things, these sounds, these birds, these sights that they previously thought, oh, I'm going to go bark at that now, that turns into the cue of, oh, I'm going to come get treats now.
So one of the things I would like to add to that is there's a management aspect to all this excited behavior, but particularly the sights and sounds from outside that you're talking about. If at all possible, you can have your dog not be exposed to those things when not under supervision, when you're not doing a training session. A lot of times that's really hard to do, but a room with a gate and a white noise generator or whatever, and start making those sessions kind of set up so your dog understands them really well. Okay, so Dee, what about you?
Well, I have a wonderfully trained dog at Border Collie mix, and she got the habit of looking out the window and barking at everything. So what I not resorted to, but the first thing I said was, well, she can't be looking out the window, or how can I avoid that? And first I put up some brown paper, which was no issue. And then I just got some nice cloudy panels and put them at the height of the windows where she couldn't look out. And that eliminated a lot of the problem. Sometimes we have to change the environment and help the dog to adapt to the things that are going on outside.
Anything? Yeah, I think, did you speak on that, Carly? Yeah, I think you did. So I'll just mention that there's a product called Wallpaper for Windows, which is really good. You can get it in designs or whatever, and it's opaque. It's easy to take off when you're no longer using it. So that's a good product to look at. Okay, good job. We did this one, and I haven't quite figured out how to put them in the answered column, so I'll try to keep track of them this way. My toy poodle is 1.5 years old and anxious in the car. So he whines a lot if he's not been exercised when he's in the car. And so how can we work on his car behavior so he will be well behaved for both the drive to the dog park and our way back? I'll let you guys begin. Okay, I'll begin.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So that's a really good question, and I think a common thing for dog owners to face. one thing that stands out to me is the specific of going to and from the dog park. If that's the only time that your dog is in the car, that might have to do with why they're getting so excited. So you might want to try doing some other car rides that are a little more low key, and going places and coming home that are still fun for the dog, but might not be so stimulating. And getting a some sort of thing to distract them, a chew toy, another Kong that they only get while they're in the car also could go a long way too.
Nice. Dee, what about you?
I agree, and I really don't have anything to offer. I mean, to add to that. That's
Yeah.
very good advice.
Well, there's yeah.
Instead
Go
of
ahead.
one message when the dog gets in the car.
Yeah, and there's also what is called a non-contingent feeding program, where it depends on if you can do it. It's better if you have somebody else driving, but you start out, you just use the dog's kibble by just handing your dog a piece of kibble about every 10 seconds, or somebody does that while you're driving. You don't get all the way to the dog park. You make that drive shorter, you make that drive something else, but your dog starts getting that kibble about every 10 seconds, and then you can start extending the amount of time that they're getting the kibble. They don't have to do anything. They're just eating, okay, nibbling the whole time. And I have seen this work pretty well within about 6 car trips, as long as you're not going to the exciting place, okay? It just changes the way the dog feels about the car emotionally. So that may help you as well. All right, so let me pick up another one. We got a cat question coming in. Okay, hold on. Don't want to miss anything. Okay, so here's one. This is from somebody we know. Coltrane, formerly Skittles, is coming along great with her dog reactivity when we're walking. Working on getting her to look at me with treats, that works well. She loves meeting dogs and does fairly well, but once in a while she sniffs and the dog sets her off and growling starts. Okay, so how would we deal with that?
I've had a lot of experience with that.
Okay, go for it.
So magic can happen if the dog sees the stimulus and looks back at you and says, I see it, you see it, what are we going to do about this? And you get to, reward the dog, move away from the stimulus, and tell them, good job. And for my current dog, when she goes past, she's not a big problem with this, but she can be. When she walks past any group of people, dogs, cats, she gets, that was good, keep going, great, and gets rewarded. Because once they start doing the right thing, you must continue to tell them, that's exactly right. I'm done.
Okay, and Carly, you have anything on that?
Yeah, only thing I'd like to add is I definitely would recommend trying to see if there are any indications that your dog might be uncomfortable before they get to the point of growling. You say that for the most part, she is okay with seeing and meeting other dogs on leash, which is wonderful. That's a huge step. And so if she's okay most of the time, but certain interactions make her uncomfortable, I would wager to bet that she's giving some more subtle signals that she might be a little tense or uncomfortable before she gets to that point. So watch her body language and see if there's anything you can pick up on. I actually did a presentation on dog body language earlier this morning. So if that's something you're interested in, I'd recommend checking out the video of that when it's posted.
Yeah, and going along with that, this is where I would advise a client, if the dog is randomly getting set off with visiting, you mentioned sniffing, I would avoid on-leash visits for sure, and just work on getting my dog to be completely comfortable. I think adding in that management aspect of it would be really valuable. You guys okay with that? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, good answer. I still can't move these over. Sorry, I'm having a techno problem here. All right. So let me get to one of these. Okay. We have a bitey dog. Okay, not biting, but a bitey dog. She gets in our lap to play, but when she does, she jumps up and nips at our face and fingers. What's the best way to get her to stop this?
Okay, I'll go.
Okay.
Normally, a pet that escalates their play, it doesn't happen quickly. You again, getting back to Carly's body language, you can see certain behaviors, certain stiffening, certain excitement levels that are elevating to that point. And there you go. Now you are in control. You can de-escalate. You can reward the dog at that point and break off the play, and help teach them that, you know, this is where we stop. On the other hand, and then you put an appropriate bite object in their mouth. It's like, you want to bite something, this is what you bite. And we play with that.
Hey, Carly, anything?
Yeah, just to build off of Dee's advice, when you don't have the opportunity or it isn't realistic for you to have a play object to give them something to chew on, and if you're not able to prevent them from biting on you, assuming that this is because they are excited and friendly and they're just using their mouths to communicate in a way that makes sense to them but isn't appropriate for us, try to teach them really consistently that using teeth on skin is an immediate off switch. All interaction, all praise, all happy talk just comes to a screeching halt as soon as the mouth opens and touches the person. And then as soon as they stop and are being more appropriate, then pick up the praise and the petting. And they want that affection from you, so they'll figure out how to get it, and they'll figure out that biting isn't working very well anymore.
And what you saw jump up was the poster child for mouthing and biting, all happy biting behavior. So again, you know, there's management, and there is substitution. So whenever our clients, you know, tell us they want to stop a behavior, there's an overall principle that we really have to honor, and that is a behavior doesn't stop unless it has a replacement behavior that functions pretty much the same way. So that's why we're not just distracting our dog with a treat or toy or something to chew on. We're actually helping them learn to replace working on our skin and our faces with something appropriate. So hopefully that helps you, okay? And also, you know, we have a behavior line, train the bay at berkeleyhumane.org. So if you're not satisfied with our answers, I'll send them to me and then I'll get them to those two. Okay, so here's a kitty question. And my cat dumps over his water bowl every morning. Why does he do this? And how can I stop it? I have some ideas, but
I'll take that
anybody
one.
else? Cat,
Yeah.
let me tell you, Carly is really the cat person around here. So
Well, thank you.
yes.
As for the why they do that, you can't know for sure, they can't tell us, but usually when cats do that sort of thing, it's simply because they like it, because it's fun. Um, so it's probably just something your cat enjoys in the same way that a lot of cats like knocking things off tables because they like watching them fall to the ground. And you're not going to convince a cat that that isn't a fun thing to do. So I think this is a place where management really is your best option. I don't know if you've considered a cat water fountain. That's probably the first place I would go, where it automatically dispenses a stream of water for them to drink. There's a few different kinds, and you know, they're all available online, so there's options. And that way you don't have to worry about your cat making a mess and your cat not having access to water. it just won't be one particular activity that they can't do anymore.
Yeah, and I think the heavy porcelain water bowls are also more difficult to knock over. Although I've seen cats go, "Wah, ah, ah." I mean, the why may be that your cat just likes playing with water.
Mhm.
Some cats do. Okay, do you have anything on kitties, Dee?
No, I think that that about covers it.
Okay. Well, listen, I have two questions here that I'm going to combine, and you're going to love this one. Oops, where did they go? All right. So first, should I use a choke chain on my dog when he pulls on the leash? And second, what do you think of extendable leashes?
I'll jump in on that.
We all will, but
I definitely recommend against the choke chain. It's not the most effective way to teach your dog, and it is something that teaches dogs with pain. The reason that choke chains ever work is because they're painful. And if they don't cause pain, then there's no consequence for the dog and it doesn't teach them anything. So using aversive such as a choke chain really can damage the bond between you and your dog and have some pretty heavy emotional side effects. So it's never something that I would recommend just for the well-being of your dog and for your relationship with them, but it's also not the most effective training tool. And if you focus on ways to instead teach your dog that good things happen when they don't pull on the leash, which can be as easy as when they pull forward on the leash, you come to a stop or turn the other direction. And when they step back and there's slack in the leash, then you go again, which we call red light, green light. It's tension and leash, stop, loose leash, go. Yeah, just focus on that and you'll have a happy dog and they'll get to enjoy the walks just as much as you.
yeah. And I must mention that I've done some videos recently on stop and go walking and loose leash walking. I add some treats to that, and they're just so much better solutions than choke chains because your dog will do what is reinforcing. And I've seen dogs just pull and pull and pull on choke chains and hurt themselves, and they can't stop doing it. So anything, and then we'll hit the extendable leashes. You want to do the extendable leashes, Dee?
Well, actually, I'm going to jump in on the choke chain as well, because fortunately, we have so much better equipment now with the front hook harnesses, the head collars. We've got a whole array of harnesses. And while we're on the topic, the front hook really helps with the pulling of the dog. The back hook harnesses actually may increase the ability of the dog to get in a low crouch and a muscular pull. So the front hook is very good. And the head collars, what we hear in class a lot is that the dogs don't like the head collars. But many can be trained to accept them, and it really helps. You can take extendable leashes.
Okay. Well, in general, you'll find that most trainers discourage extendable leashes. I have to admit, I use an extendable leash to get my wild dog from the front to the car because it's just easy. It's the only thing I use it for. But in general, if you want your dog to learn to walk with you, you'll find that those retractable leashes have tension on them all the time. So your dog never learns where the end of the leash is, for one thing, and they never learn that there's no tension on the leash. So if you wanted them to walk on a loose leash, it's counter to that. Anything for you, Carly?
Yeah. So in terms of retractable leashes and going back to choke chains too, I do think that safety is a really important aspect of both of those tools. And to start by going back to the choke chains, I do think it's really important to mention that they can be very dangerous to dogs because it it's a chain noose that's around their neck. And if they put enough pressure, it can be really damaging to their neck and their throat. We've seen collapsed tracheas in little dogs from pressure on collars. So just another thing to remember about choke chains too is there's a safety component. As there is with retractable leashes, they can be a pretty big risk for the dog and the people. There is an alarming number of amputated fingers from retractable leashes because they're really thin, they're really hard and tight. So in a dangerous situation, it's people's natural response to hold on to the leash because there's not a way to reel it in. And so if your dog is in a dangerous situation and you try to pull them back by that basically a thick fishing line, that can be really dangerous for your hands. And I'm sorry to be a little graphic with the description of what can happen, but it's true, it's a real risk. And it can create dangerous situations for dogs too, because you don't have the ability to keep them right by you. So if they run off towards another dog around a corner who might not be the friendliest, you can't get them back. And it also is a very real risk too of things like them darting from the bushes into the street and getting hit by a car before you have any chance to get them back. So even if it's just for the safety of your pet, go with better equipment.
Yeah, and I would like to mention that I do a class through Train the Bay, Berkeley Humane, called Let's Just Walk. And it starts with good leash handling and goes to how we actually reinforce our dogs on stop and go walking, how we reinforce our dogs for simply wanting to be next to us. They don't have to be looking at us all the time, just next to us. So it goes a long way for everything, reactivity, teaching your dog to walk calmly on a leash and only acknowledge the environment in a calm way is a tool that you will use lifelong. So I would really love to have you all in Let's Just Walk class, because a lot of the questions we're getting, you see, is that these excited dogs, right? And before we go on to one other one, well, with this one, I think I can add in something too, but let's go to this question that just came in the chat box. There's a 7-month-old puppy who gets overexcited going for walks. Speaking of walks, he cries so loudly, it's more like screaming from the time I put his harness on until about a block away from my building. And that's interesting, isn't it? When we're in the hallway, it's so loud, it sounds like he's in major distress. So I've tried making us go back inside until he's quiet, but that doesn't really work. And there are ways actually to make that work, but let's let the trainers kick in on this and see where we are with it, okay? Okay, I'll start kicking in on that one.
Thank you.
What I was going to go with was all of these exciting dogs. You have to look at whether or not you are really overstimulating them or have from the time you got them. And when we do adoptions, our adoption counselors advise people, you're just adopted the dog, take it easy, don't run them out to the dog park. And a lot of times, because we want to have fun with them and we want them to have fun, we put them in situations where they're overstimulated to begin with. And a lot of times I have to tell clients, I said, do less, do work at home, play with a ball, tire your dog out other ways. They don't have to go for a walk or to a dog park or to an exciting place every day. So anybody else on that?
One thing I'll add that isn't necessarily about specific things you can do to train or manage that. But when you are working with that, when you're going out on the walks, you're probably hopefully using treats. And just make sure that the treats you're using are motivating enough. One of the biggest mistakes we see people do with training is that their treats either are not motivating enough, the dog isn't that into them, and that they're being too stingy with them. So since this is such a big issue for you, and something that sounds like you've had trouble getting past, I would go to the grocery store and find the tastiest, grossest to people, which means tastiest to dogs, treat you can. Have a supply of that ready and have that be just for
Okay.
walks. And you might want to even try going out for walks before their meals. So you know that he is going to be hungry and even more motivated to get those treats. Of course, that isn't a solution to that specific issue, but making sure that your motivator is strong enough will go a far way when you get there.
And so Dee, what about you?
Well, going out for a walk calmly starts in the house calmly. So the first trigger is the handler puts on shoes and the dog is all excited. So we want to train, you know, handler reaches for the collar, handler picks up the leash, handler puts on the shoes. My dog knows when I put plastic bags in my pocket, you know, we're going out. So all of these things you want to try to, you will train. You are calm when I put on my shoes. You are calm when I pick up the leash. I open the door and I reinforce you for relaxing, because the walk starts before you leave. That's all I have. That's my comment.
Yeah, and it also goes to literally teaching your puppy to put on the harness calmly. And that is just taking time. It's waiting for calm behavior. It's you've got your harness there, you've got your food here, and you get your dog to put their head through the harness, they get a treat. You don't try to do everything at once. So if they learn one, I need to be standing still, all my harness is put on. You can do that with lots of treats and by taking it in little bitty pieces of the behavior that you
May
want.
I interject that you can do that any time of day? Don't necessarily do it just when you're going out.
Good point. Okay. So I have two here about dogs getting along with each other. So we have sister dogs. They have a lot of drive and escape by leaping or climbing fences. When not together, they are calm and well-mannered. And the second question that is sort of related to that is, how do you introduce a new puppy to an old grumpy puppy? So why don't we start with the pack mentality question, sister dogs who get in trouble when they're together.
I can start there.
Okay.
What you're describing is not uncommon for sibling dogs who, when they grow up together since birth, you know, they just feed off of each other so much. It is the pack mentality, like Nancy mentioned, and they are more likely to do things like going on adventures and getting into trouble. And so, first, management with the fence, I think, is your first stop. Isn't going to change the dog's behavior together, but you definitely want to keep them from escaping. So prevent them from getting to that fence, build something in front of the fence, make the fence higher. And just know too, that even though they're not necessarily trying to escape when they're separate now, they probably will get to a point where they're going to be driven to go over the fence on themselves too. So if they can clear it now and escape, they're going to be able to for the foreseeable future. So take care of that first and foremost. And as for them being together and really rowdy versus separate, I think the first good place to start is having them spend lots of time apart. Do things with them on an individual basis, training time, just hanging out time, different walks, visits, however your home is set up to manage that. It would depend if you have another person in your house and you can take the dogs for their special time with you and then switch. That's a good option. But really get them used to having a bond with people and really existing when they're not together.
Yeah. And another thing, and I know Dee will probably weigh on this one too, because we've done a lot of it, is teaching a group behavior. So you can work with just plain old sits. Each dog sits, and I call it queen for a day. And when you say the right-hand dog's name, she's queen for a day and gets to have a treat. She has to stay still while you say the other dog's name and give the other dog a treat. So you start having this group behavior, and also teaching a recall separately. But one of my favorite things is to have a group name for your dogs. So when I had 2 Australian Shepherds, it was Aussies, come. And now I have 2 females that are not the same breed type. So I say, ladies, come. So that's a group name. That means come together. And that is a real fun. It takes some effort to do it, but you can do it. And getting that recall really solid will help you keep them away from those fences. Dee, how about you?
Well, all the advice you've given is spot on. I want to interject that all of these things take months, several months, 6 months sometimes to install. And so have reasonable expectations. These are strong, basic behaviors that the dogs come with. And every handler facing these issues must realize that doing something for a month or 2 is not going to fix it. In fact, in some cases, I have a dog who's a real committed hunter, and I have to manage her all the time. So some of these things won't go away. We need to just know what the triggers are and how to manage them.
Mm-hmm. Nice answers. Okay, so here's one that's a little different. How do you teach a dog who bites, growls, and snaps when you get close to his food or toys? I'm waiting.
Okay, I'll jump in. Well, books and seminars have been written, and we all attend them, about resource guarding. And that's what dogs do. They know what they own, and they want to protect it. So if we're talking about a food bowl, then we put down the food bowl, we put a little bit of food in there, and we pick it up and put more food in and put it down. This is just one technique. What we're trying to tell, the message we're trying to give is, if you let me have this bowl, it gets better. So that's just like step 1.
Right. Carly, how about you?
Yeah. You know, as Dee touched on, this is such a huge subject, and thankfully there are tons of really great resources out there. So in the meantime, while you are working up to your dog being comfortable, having you near, you know, again, assuming it's a food bowl, accept that this is a natural behavior and accept that it's not going to go away overnight. Protect yourself, protect your dog. Come up with a system of feeding them that means you do not come into contact with their food bowl when they are eating until you are 100% confident, and hopefully you've worked with the trainer to get them past this. So, you know, it can be as easy as have the dog in one space, get their food bowl ready, put it in a room with a closed door, let them in that room. When they're completely done eating, let them out and then go in and take the food bowl. Since we aren't necessarily just talking about food, and it can be other objects, It can really be anything, but if it's toys, a really simple first way to start is teaching them to trade toys for other toys or treats. Simple exercise: if you have really tasty treats when they have a toy, toss it away from the toy. If they drop the toy and go pick up the treat, praise them, pick up the toy when they're not near it. And you can just go through that several times a day of trading the toy for something better, and use that as a management tool too. Definitely don't try to take a toy away from a dog who might have guarding tendencies. Always have something better to trade it for, and move the dog away from that object before you go for it whatsoever. And if you're ever in a situation where a dog has something and is guarding it and you don't have a safe way to get it away, let the dog keep it. Don't push it.
Yeah. And adding to that, to learn these techniques for trading and this sort of thing with a dog that's guarding, it's really, really valuable to get a professional to work with you, to show you how to do these things safely. Another thing you can do is put what we call a house line on your dog. It's just a piece of cord or some old thing. I don't like leashes with a loop on the end because they catch on things. But when you're home with a dog, have that leash dragging. So if you do need to move your dog away from something, you don't have to put your hands on them or get near them. So, but again, this can be at best unpleasant to live with and at worst dangerous. So you need to really work with somebody who can set you up so that you're doing this efficiently and not provoking that behavior for the dog. Okay, so good. So we're getting close, I think, to the end. Oh, how do we introduce a new puppy to an old grumpy puppy? And what is my chat window? Oh, I see what's happening. Okay.
I can start
who can
there.
do that? Right.
So there isn't one answer to this, but I think the rule of thumb is to manage the first meetings very closely, keep them short, keep them low stress, and keep them positive. Don't let the puppy meet your older dog by running into the room and wrestling all over him because he thinks it's fun and expect that they're going to work it out. You're going to have to teach the puppy the ground rules, and you're going to have to teach the older dog that the presence of the puppy is going to be okay. So if you're able to do some obedience with the puppy first, get him into a really solid sit or down, have the puppy in a sit or down on leash, getting treats, and letting the older dog investigating the puppy while you're distracting the puppy from the older dog. That's a really good place to start. And just keep everything positive, slow, separate them when you're not there, and know that it's going to be a while for them to form their new relationship.
So another little technique I like is a lot of fun. It's you let your grumpy old dog know that every time that puppy's around, he gets treats and attention. Oh, look, here's the puppy. Here, have some cookies, and I'm going to pet you before I pet the puppy. Oh, that's really cool. That doesn't have anything to do with that old dominance thing. It just has to do with letting your dog know that the arrival of the puppy means something fun will happen for you. That may work for you. And again, you guys have to trial and error some stuff and see what's having an effect. How will you know when things are getting better, right? So, or when you're doing the right thing. When things are getting better, you're obviously doing the right thing. When you're getting what you want, all right? If things are deteriorating, you have to change strategies. Dee, you have anything on introducing?
I think you guys have covered it really well. Thank you. Perfect.
Okay. And I think we may be down to the last question of the evening and just right on time. I adopted a shelter dog about 1.5 years ago, and she's made a good transition to my home for the most part. The area I'm having trouble with is leash aggression and barrier aggression. She goes crazy in the car and on leash when she sees other dogs, barks and pulls extremely strongly on leash, scratches at the car windows. So I've been working on calm leash walking and giving treats when she doesn't pull. What can I do to help change this behavior? She's a hound pit mix most likely.
I can give some thoughts on that. Really, my one big thought is work with a trainer. Find a really solid certified trainer who can work with you and your dog, help you come up with a step-by-step plan, show you some techniques, help you with management strategies, and really set you up for success. That's definitely something that you want to address. And of course, you're trying. It's a tricky thing to get past. It sounds like it's pretty intense. And so keep doing what you're doing to try to manage things. Anytime you can prevent her from seeing out windows if she's having that barrier aggression, avoid other dogs if you can on walks. Some people with really reactive dogs just have to, change their walk routine and wait for it to get later in the evening before they go out, and get really good at spotting other dogs and going the other direction and avoiding that, and just keeping things as peaceful as possible while you're working with that trainer to make steps in the right direction over time.
Yeah, and I have a little seminar online. We happen to have one starting tomorrow night. It's about an hour and a half at 4:30 tomorrow afternoon. It's called Dogs Reacting, and it has a lot of factual information and different types of approaches. So it really helps you educate yourself about this behavior. So I would encourage you to join our seminar tomorrow night. Dee, do you have anything on this?
I do. We expect our dogs, no matter what, to be tethered to a 6-foot leash and walk along a narrow walkway, a sidewalk, and pass by anything that happens to come their way. This does not exist in nature. It is not normal behavior. Dogs need a flight distance, and they need to be able to have freedom to move their bodies and deal with oncoming triggers. So it is not anyone's fault. We're looking in that way. It's natural that a dog would be suspicious and concerned. So I agree that we need to, working with a trainer and helping your dog handle these situations is great. The other option, and Carly sort of mentioned it, there are a lot of midnight dog walkers out there. People that have perfectly lovely dogs, but they have to walk them when no one's around. But it's not a club you want to join if you can avoid it.
Well, one of the things I've discovered in teaching online classes where we're not putting, dogs are working at home with their people, and it really has a real advantage, especially for highly aroused, highly excitable dogs, because now people are doing 4-6 weeks of training at home, and they're exposing their dogs to less, and it's terribly effective. So again, this comes under the do less out there where it's exciting and do more at home. Work on all those little behaviors, stays, watch me's, come to me. You can do so much in your kitchen and your yard and your deck, whatever you have. You can do so much in there to fill that dog's head with the right things. So, I really encourage you to take a class. I encourage everybody to take a class. I teach them. So sorry, I have a bias in that direction. So I think that is something that we have to, that you have to look at. So anyway, not to babble on, but do you guys, we have maybe 2 or 3 minutes left. Would you have any final messages for people? If you were going to leave them with a message, what would it be?
It would be that have reasonable expectations. look at the wonderful gifts, the good things that your dog brings to you, and get the information you need to work on the behaviors that are a problem for you and your dog. And you will be so happy. The more you put into your pet, the more you get out of them.
Okay, I was just double checking. Carly, what is your final message?
So I guess my final words to leave with you are that if you're working with training your dog and you're getting frustrated because you're not seeing the results you want, step into your dog's shoes or your dog's paws for a moment. And from their perspective, ask, why should I do this thing you want me to? And what exactly are you trying to get me to do? And if they don't have a good reason to do this behavior over any of the other behaviors they can do, and if they don't have a very clear understanding of what you want them to do, then they're not going to do it. So remember their perspective, and that can take you a long way.
Okay, and I'm going to thank both Dee, Carly, and we're going to turn it back over to Morgan, who is our main moderator for the evening. And we're going to be bidding you all adieu and goodbye and arrivederci and, you know, whatever language you want it in, we're going to say goodbye. Morgan, are you there with us?
I am, and thank you so much to all of you, Nancy, Carly, and Dee. You're just a force to be reckoned with when it comes to helping us all live better with our fuzzy best friends. And thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us. I like to think this was more fun than the debate. And so with that, we will conclude this webinar. Thank you again for showing up.